The common thread I've noticed across business, academics, and career is that those who can manage their time the best usually have the most success. And it's fascinating though, because we're never really taught explicitly how to manage our time, right? Think about your middle school or your high school. You ever have a time where a teacher or somebody sat down with you and said, hey, this is how you can manage your time better. Here's some practical tips. No, we're just given a ton of homework assignments or a ton of projects, a ton of exams to study for, along with our own interests and responsibilities that we have at home. We're just expected to figure it all out. We're expected to be thrown in the deep end and know how to swim. And yes, I believe that that's a skill that you can learn on your own through experience, but I also truly believe there are tangible things that you can take on as habits for yourself. And the earlier you're able to take these on, the better off you'll be, because then you can be somebody that can manage a lot of things at once. And look, throughout my high school, throughout my college, I was somebody that always had to work on top of the academic side. I'm somebody that has always had to manage a lot of familial responsibilities due to my parents having divorced and needing me to spend a lot of time at home doing a lot. And so I understand what it feels like to be spread out thin. If we're not taught how to manage our time better, then we're just exhausted after one responsibility, and that's not what we want to have happen, right? Today, I'm able to manage my biomedical engineering major, doing both my bachelor's and master's at the same time, along with my business, along with my hobbies, along with my friends, and also, of course, everything I love to do here with content creation. And I really do believe these tips have helped me with it, and I hope that these can help you too. My name is June Yu. If you're new to the channel, welcome. If you're returning, welcome back. I would love to say that we could increase the amount of time that we have available to us, but obviously that's not the case. We're all limited due to the responsibilities and of course the 24-hour window. And of course, every one of us isn't necessarily given the same fair share of time. I understand it, right? Especially when I was going through that really, really bad divorce with my parents. I had no time to do anything else but work and to spend time at home doing a lot of chores and responsibilities, taking care of my family. That was a really, really difficult period of my life. But I've noticed that even in that midst, I had to learn how to manage my time so I could still get my homeworks done. I was able to do well in school at that time, although it took a little bit of time to really, really figure it all out. Along with the fact that now as I'm living alone, I have a little bit more in my control, that I have to be very cautious with how I use my time so I can still be very productive, but also be very healthy mentally and physically too. I don't ever want to neglect my own health throughout that process. So we're gonna go over some tips that I hope that can really, really help you. If you have any questions at all, please leave your comments below. Give this video a thumbs up and of course subscribe. With all that being said, sit back, relax, and enjoy the video. The first step I want you to take is a time audit. This is an integral step, and it's one that allows us to gain an awareness of how we're spending our time. This is where we can really start to recognize our own shortcomings. Now, I want to caveat by saying, I'm not telling you that you have to be productive every minute of your life. I'm not, right? I believe that I'm someone naturally very lazy, so I can lay in my bed all day long, and I've done that. I hope though that you can start to recognize that even an hour additional to your days can be extremely, extremely beneficial. Okay, imagine another hour that you have available to you. If you can utilize that hour effectively, let's say you have another skill that you want to build and eventually you want to leverage it for monetization purposes. If you do that for an hour a day for 3, 4, 5 months straight, and then a year straight, 2 years straight, think about how much that skill can really evolve over time. So even a little bit of time savings here is going to have tremendous impact. So what I want you to do is genuinely just take out a journal, however you like to do this, even on your phone, and just actually look at how you're spending each of your days. Follow a day in the life for yourself, right? Maybe you record it or even, and you can tag me in it. But the idea is to have an honest set of accountability here where you can look at, okay, what time am I waking up? What am I doing after I wake up? How long am I spending time in the bathroom? How long am I doing work for? How long am I cooking for? How long am I commuting for? And just having a sense of awareness here is really going to benefit you as you start to manage how can you do this a little bit more optimally, right? And so for me, my example is, one, I used to spend a lot of time in the bathroom getting ready in the morning. Why? Not because I was actually spending the entire 30, 40 minutes getting ready, but because I would watch YouTube videos in there. I would watch different sports highlights or whatever the case may be as I was getting ready. But because I was so interested in that, I was being lackadaisical with how I was doing everything that I was needing to do in the bathroom as I was getting ready. And even that was a small little change for me where I was like, like, you know what? I don't want to bring my phone into the bathroom anymore because I'm wasting 20 minutes just because I like watching these podcasts or I like watching all these sports highlights. Like it wasn't a good use of my time. And so that 20 minutes saved there allowed me to reserve it and then maybe even spend 20 more minutes making myself a healthy breakfast, right? Or 20 more minutes doing a little bit of work, or 20 more minutes trying to journal, 20 more minutes doing something different, right? Another big component of this was in the mornings, I was spending time waking up and using my phone as my alarm clock. I would start to doom scroll for like 15, 20 minutes. And although those 15, 20 minutes weren't necessarily a huge impact to my day in terms of the time standpoint, it didn't allow me to get my day started in terms of an energy standpoint, right? Because I felt lethargic afterwards, then I wasn't able to really do the things in terms of my morning routine that I wanted to execute, right? And so when you're going through this type of auditing, not just how are you spending your time, but how do you feel after each of those time blocks? And this can be a really good foundational part to you. Again, we're not looking at trying to spend every little bit of time in a productive manner, but where are some instances, where are some areas that you can just change or tweak a little bit or refine a little bit to give yourself that additional 30 minutes, give yourself an additional hour, or maybe even 2 hours. I'm telling you, when I went through this whole time auditing process, I saved myself like 3-4 hours just because I realized a lot of these areas in my life could be a lot more streamlined. And we'll touch on some of these other things in terms of the next tips moving forward. Number 2 will be batching. And this will build upon the first idea really well. And I used to be horrible in terms of scheduling different tasks in close proximity together. An example of this is for many of you that watch my morning routine video, you know that I have this deep work session. Whether it be 90 minutes or 3 hours, I have this time dedicated and leveraged for my most demanding tasks. But what I used to do was, because I have 2 screens, one screen would have the project, whether it be business related, whether it be for school, and then on the left screen, I would have my messages up, whether it be my text messages, whether it be my Slack channels, whether it be my emails. And I hated the idea of people waiting on me for a response. So I would immediately respond to them, right? But the issue was it takes time for me to recalibrate, whether it be a 30-second message or even a 10-second reaction that I do to a message. It takes time for me to recalibrate from one task to another. And especially if I'm utilizing this deep work session for my most demanding task, that project that I have on the right side of my screen, that requires a ton of cognitive effort. And for me to switch to a different task, it's not necessarily worth it in the grand scheme of things. Instead, now what I'll do is I'll just break those tasks up. I know when it's time for my deep work sessions, and I'll dedicate that to 1 or 2 big projects. And then the other times during my day where I don't necessarily need as much cognitive effort, perhaps I do it even before the peak productivity window, I'll spend that 20 minutes just responding to all of the text messages or all of the emails or all of the Slack messages at once. And just splitting that up allows me to stay focused on one task versus another and trying to have to juggle both at the same time. So batching, whether it's you going on for errands and instead of you doing multiple errands throughout the week, you just schedule one day to go through all of your errands. It's an opportunity for you to be more efficient with it. You can keep your attention where it needs to be on a specific task at once. And I found that to be really, really effective. On the flip side, you don't necessarily want to be just doing one thing for too long, because I think that you lose engagement, you lose interest, and you lose a lot of focus on that. So then it's good for you to switch to a different task. But what I'm talking about in terms of batching is, can you ensure that similar tasks that are likened together can be scheduled for a reasonable amount of time at once, and then you can switch to a different task if you'd like. Number 3 is understanding priorities. This is really important because I think in today's world, we fail to do this, especially because we're constantly in our society told to go, go, go. We forget to ask ourselves, hey June, what's actually important to you? And if you haven't journaled before, what are you doing, right? We talk about journaling a lot on this page, but the idea is, can you gain an awareness of what it is that's of importance to you? What do you value? What's actually going to make a difference in your life? And what are things that are actually just put onto you as expectations by others or by society that isn't necessarily important to you? And you have to know that, you know what? Yeah, we have limited time, but we can control how we spend it. And if we can spend it in areas that matter to us, then man, that can make a huge drastic change to our lives. An example for me is I used to surround myself with people that I know didn't really like me at all, right? When I started to separate myself from that type of negative environment, I was saving myself a lot of time, and I could utilize that bandwidth, that mental capacity to do other endeavors too. And so as I stepped away from those types of people, I started to recognize, hey, now I have more time. Where can I put that to? In terms of college, right? I'm not somebody that is big on partying, right? I don't do that. That's not something that's of interest to me, and I understand that maybe that is of interest to a lot of other people, but that is one thing that I was okay, quote unquote, sacrificing in terms of the normal college experience. And I don't regret that at all, because now I'm about to graduate in a few months from now with some incredible opportunities that I couldn't have ever imagined if I was wasting my time in areas that weren't of interest to me. Again, my areas of interest did not have to be yours, but just gain an awareness of that and prioritize what is of importance to you. So next time that you're creating a list of to-dos, I know that we love to do that, and making goals is probably the easiest thing ever. Making good goals is a completely different thing, but also executing that is really what separates the most successful people from people that can't really get out of their current situation. Executing them requires a level of prioritization. It requires you to say, you know what, I'm okay sacrificing these things because I understand my sacrifices will dictate my future, and these are the areas that I want to focus upon, and yes, I promise you it will pay off. Number 4, which really encompasses everything, is creating a schedule for yourself. Whenever I say the word schedule, I think that I have two immediate distinct groups. One area are of people that are saying, I hate scheduling. Scheduling is way too rigid. I'm somebody that's super spontaneous, and I don't like the fact that I'm tied down to a schedule. And then I hear another set of people that are saying, oh, I need to schedule to every minute. If I don't schedule every minute out, then I feel really anxious. And each to their own, right? Is that the saying? Each their own? But I hope that we can find some sort of medium ground. A schedule is so important because naturally as human beings, we like to procrastinate. And if you are a procrastinator, aka me, if you don't have an ability for you to look at something and tell yourself, okay, this is how I go about doing it, then it's likely that when you get to it, you're going to be faced with a lot of mental obstacles, right? One, then you have to think about, okay, what do I have to do? What were of importance to me this past week? I knew that I was trying to prioritize something, but now I can't remember it. And then you just create all this mental chaos for yourselves, and then you're wasting cognitive effort, and then you go into your work and you're already drained, right? No, just spend time even the day before. Just don't do it the day of. I like it the day before, or at the very beginning of your day if you're going to do it the day of, or even on your weekend prior. Just have an ability where you're separated from that battle between your mind and your body, and you can literally just take that space to say, I know what I need to get done. This is how I'm going to put it within my schedule, and that's how I'm going to have success. All I have to do is figure out a way to do those things and I'll be good. And I think another element here that you have to recognize is that you should absolutely be scheduling time for rest and play too, right? And this is how you can have those restorative experiences. How many times do you find yourself taking those rests or going out with your friends, knowing that you want to take a step back from everything, and then you return the next morning and you're thinking, oh my gosh, I still feel just as tired as I did yesterday. And that's because while you were out, or while you were taking that break, or while you were watching Netflix, your mind was rushing to the things that you should have gotten done, and you weren't allowing yourself to feel rest, and you weren't allowing yourself to gain that. And so the next day you're not enjoying those types of restorative benefits. So what I want you to do is when you're creating those schedules, make it super realistic, right? Create blocks of time for yourselves. So time blocking is one technique that I've talked about before. I really think that you should utilize, but then also just integrate times for you to actually have an ability for you to eat, have an ability for you to take a step back and do things that are enjoyable to you. And I think when you can make a schedule practical and you can make a schedule realistic, then you gain the benefits of having something outlined for you beforehand while also not burning yourself out. And so creating a schedule is super, super important. Maybe I make a whole video about how I schedule my days, and I think that could be interesting, but scheduling has absolutely made the world's difference. And think about it. How many of us, maybe if you're still in university, that you don't necessarily experience this, but a lot of people that go out of university struggle with the idea that they don't have an actual schedule for themselves anymore. And so they used to be somebody that can do 9 hours of work throughout a day or 10 hours of work throughout the day, still go to the gym, still spend time with their friends and family. But then when they go into their adult life and they have this 9 to 5, afterwards they have no sort of schedule and they just waste their time away, and they feel constantly tired or lethargic and they can't get anything done that they want to get done. It's because they don't have that schedule anymore. They don't have that structure anymore. So don't lose that structure. Structure is actually really, really beneficial. And if you're somebody that's still saying, no, I'm somebody spontaneous, again, I told you that you can insert time for rest and play, but also insert time for your spontaneous activities too, whatever that looks like. Just have something there that you can look to and count on for you to guide across your days. I think it's really, really helpful. Number 5, making use of your quote unquote downtime. And I put quotes on there because most people, and perhaps you currently, view it as a time to do nothing and just scroll on your phone. Whereas I want you now to view it as a time that you can leverage for other work. By no means am I trying to say that you should never have downtime. You should always be doing work in that moment. No, absolutely not. I'm talking about specific pockets of time, especially as a student, that we have that we can make better use of. And when you get in the habit of doing this, then you can find yourself having a lot more time available to you, right? And so specific examples could be commuting, right? I used to commute walking to my classes from my apartment to my university's main campus. Took me about 25 minutes of a walk. That meant that I had 25 minutes there to perhaps just listen to music or just walk without anything. And sometimes I've done that, or I could leverage it for something else, and we'll talk about what that is. And sometimes there are moments in class, especially in high school, that my teachers would say, hey, we're done for the material in today's day. I know that we finished a little bit early, but feel free to use this time as you like. And most people would reach for their phones, but you could do something else in that period of time. If you are talking about, perhaps for me, when I got ready in the morning, or when I was making myself breakfast, I would have these 10 minutes, 15 minutes pocket of time that I could potentially be doing something that wouldn't require necessarily active focus, but it would still be beneficial to me. So what I would do in those pockets of time was listen to voice memos. And this was part of stage 3 of my learning system, the post-class immediate reviews, where I was practicing the active recall questions that I made in class. And as I was verbally answering these aloud, I would just turn on my phone voice recording and I would capture my response. And so when I had time while cooking myself food in the morning, I could listen to my response and perhaps even critique it mentally, right? And even when I was commuting and I had the 20-minute walk, I would listen to voice recordings. So it's just a great way to make use of that time because I needed that refresher. I needed to utilize spaced repetition here. And it was a great opportunity for me to quickly do that. Just making use of that pocket of time, but also in class when I would have that additional 10, 15 minutes that the teacher would give us because they ended the class assignment early. Instead of just walking out, instead of just going on my phone, I spend that 15 minutes because I'm there, right? I already have my computer out, I already have my learning system book out. I might as well get some other work done. So once you can make it a habit to make use of these quote unquote downtimes, whereas other people would waste that opportunity, you become somebody that can really make use of every little bit of time available to you. Again, I'm not saying this for all of your downtimes. No, I really do believe that there should be moments when you're eating food that you should be just eating food. When you're hanging out with your friends, you should just hang out with friends. But again, there are these small pockets of time that you might be wasting now that could be leveraged for other opportunities. And I think you should. That should wrap up the 5 ways in which you can be managing your time better. I understand what it feels like to be constantly overwhelmed with a ton of different responsibilities and tasks, but I really hope that this was a good foundation for you to begin with in terms of how do I manage all of that at once in a manner that's effective, in a manner that doesn't make me want to lose my mind, right? And so if you have any questions at all, if I missed anything, please leave them in the comments below. I'd love having those conversations with you. Give this video a thumbs up and of course subscribe. So until next time, please take care of yourselves and I'll see you all at the top.